Beautiful, beautiful. Welcome everybody to another episode of Panoramic Perspectives. We have a very special guest today, a very good friend of mine. He's an interesting human being. He started his career as a corporate lawyer. He has moved into equity investing. He's founded a company of his own. He's now doing his masters in Singapore. He has played tennis on the professional Indian circuit, and he's also only the third man ever to complete a full Ironman in Thun, Switzerland, which is one of the hardest Ironmans there is. So we are very, very excited to speak to him today. Uh, I think we just dive straight into it, Nirbhay.
Yeah, so we lost the first 3 to 4 minutes of the episode, which is not the end of the world. It's not a lot of time, but it's sad because it honestly a really good episode. So we're just gonna pick up from where we actually have the recording. Yeah, hopefully you guys like it, and sorry about that. All right, sorry about that. I think everything looks good now, so we can continue. Yeah, so one of the things you mentioned was, at that young of an age, you didn't really know what it meant to be a lawyer, what it would like to be a lawyer. Now that you've gone through that, you've had experience practicing law, been a lawyer. What does it mean for you now to be a lawyer?
So, so actually, what law really does, as much as anything, is that it encourages you to think. It encourages you to make arguments, to question certain beliefs which are already there in society, or let's say even in like a legal system. It really encourages you to think. So by being a lawyer, one thing which has always stuck with me, no matter what I was doing, is number one is always question, and number two is always think, and number three would be to never stop learning. Because just giving you context and even the viewers context of how many laws there are, like no matter how good a lawyer you can be, there are more laws than any one single person can ever know. And this is spread out between, let's say, the constitution, the different statutory laws, the different case laws. It's hundreds and millions of pages uh, and uh, and cases and different laws, regulations, and all these things. So one thing you have to constantly do as a lawyer is you have to constantly teach yourself, and you have to constantly keep learning new skill sets and different challenges, keep updating yourself about different laws and stuff. So me currently, what for me being a lawyer is exactly these three things of never stopping to learn and always questioning things.
Interesting. I have what might be a bit of a stupid question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. My background is in computer science. I worked on a lot of projects where I've had to write a lot of code. And generally, when you go about these types of projects, like you'll create something, then you'll want to add a new feature on later on. So you'll do something else, and then eventually you come up with this project where if you were to do it from the start with all of these ideas and knowledge that you have now, you would write and create everything very differently in a much more succinct and maybe compact and efficient manner. In law, do you think if we were to rewrite all laws for a new country today, do you think it would be just as detailed, just as complicated, just as long? Or do you think you could come up with something a lot more efficient, for the lack of a better word?
See, the truth is that laws are complicated for a reason. That reason is that societies are complicated. And literally for every law which is created, there are hundreds of people trying to find a loophole in that law. So then for each law, let's say five other laws have to be created to ensure those loopholes aren't easily met. That said, one thing which you can do, and one thing which I've always been in favor for, is less regulations, uh, less rules and and less regulations, but stricter compliance and stricter patrolling of those regulations. So, that everyone knows exactly what the laws are, and there's no scope for anyone to actually even try to find the loophole. So that's actually what you have to try to do in order to reduce the number of laws. Because I've worked with companies, I've worked in regulations, I've tried to set up companies, and just the legal compliances go so overboard that most companies really can't even do what they set out to do because they're just stuck in all of these different things.
Do you think that's significantly different in India compared to a place, let's say, like Singapore? Because so I've been living in Toronto for around 7 years now, and that is one thing that I see over here when a new company starts. There is like they're very scared to not comply with any little thing. Whereas, I mean, I could be wrong. I haven't been in India for 7 years, but at least my perception of Indian startups is that they won't think of any of the compliance or the legal side of things. They'll just solve the problem that they're setting out to solve, and everything else will just fit into place.
You're absolutely right. But the thing is also over here, at least in Singapore, that the law is so black and white that you know exactly what you have to follow. So let's say if you're setting up a restaurant, it, right when you set it up, you have a checklist that okay, I need to follow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need to follow these rules, these regulations, these compliances, and I know I can run my business without any hassle. In India, the laws, like let's say you want to set up a restaurant, there would be a separate like environmental law you'll have to comply with. There'll be a separate food and catering law which you'll have to comply with. There'll be a separate shop and establishment law which you'll have to comply with, and none of that will be told to you. You'll be expected to figure it all out. And and even within those laws there are so many things which are overlapping that it gets really complicated. And even though you say that I'll just set this up and I'll just face the consequences whenever they come. The issue is when the consequences come, it becomes really difficult.
Now, you mentioned how there's a lot of layers to the legal world in India. You founded a company called ShareAcre, right? Talk to us a little bit more about that. Not so much from the legal and compliance perspective. I want to know how you got into that, and of course, kind of lead into the legal and compliance piece that you had to deal with in your own learning of founding that company in India.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll tell you how I got into it first. So, two of my closest friends from school were already working on this idea, which they had already named. It was called ShareAcre. And what we as a company tried to do was fractionalize holiday homes. So like currently, most most real estate in India is bought for personal consumption or for investment purposes, correct? And if you actually look at Delhi, Bombay, even Gurgaon, real estate doesn't fetch you the same returns when you invest for a commercial purpose as it does in like a holiday destination, like a Shimla, like a Naldhera or a Goa. But many of the holiday homes which are present in this place, which actually can fetch you the good returns, are more expensive than any middle class Indian can own. So, what our idea was to fractionalize these holiday homes, and these are all like premium properties. All of them were like more than between 5 to 10 crores. So, like really good properties which could fetch really good returns because of Airbnb and all these different uses you can put them to. So, our idea was to fractionalize these holiday homes and sell fractions of the holiday homes to anywhere up to 4 to 5 different people. So it was kind of democratizing holiday home industry or democratizing the vacation home industry.
A quick question about that. Why do holiday homes have better returns than commercial real estate? Because that doesn't seem very obvious to me at first. Because assuming, I mean, if you lend out real estate to a business, I would assume that they have, like, the demand for that is relatively inelastic. Businesses would be willing to pay whatever they need to pay for generally for the right real estate. And so,
Yeah.
why is that? It's the other way around.
So one actual reason is the demand. So for real estate, especially commercial real estate, it's only the like all the good companies actually only go to the really high end office spaces in basically anywhere. These high end office spaces are priced in many crores. Whereas you look at like lower end office spaces, that's actually mostly dealt with smaller companies, and smaller companies have a higher turnover, because they sometimes go out of business, they sometimes realize the rent is too high. It has all these different issues. So you're right, commercial real estate, when it's completely high end, and you see, like like Cyber City in Gurgaon, you see all of those places, like the entire Google office, all the offices which are coming on Golf Course Extension Road, those are premium offices. But no one middle class can actually afford buying those offices because they all will be multiple crores. So exactly that. So actually, so when you compare holiday luxury homes to low-end commercial office spaces, holiday luxury homes can actually get you a way better return.
That's really interesting. I think especially in India now, a lot more people are moving into the desire to want a holiday home in the Goas of the world, and you go all across India. With fractional ownership, though, I'm sure there's a lot of conflict, a lot of liability, right? At the end of the day, you're selling a piece of a home. There's timeshare involved. There's probably a lot more liabilities involved. So, have you had an experience where you had to deal with a lot of that conflict? How do you deal with that?
Yeah.
Sounds like a lot of legal work also.
Yeah, correct. So actually, so actually dealing with the legal work, one thing we had is we had these co-ownership agreements, which would
Okay.
be signed between all the co-owners, which would really very simply and clearly lay down the rights of when a single co-owner can use the vacation home, how they book the vacation home, what happens when no one is using it, how are the profits divided. All of that was clearly captured in that co-ownership agreement. But you're right. So you're completely right. I mean, one big reason which I would say not like we didn't succeed to the level which we thought that we would, was because we tried to inculcate the fact that you could invest in a property and you could actually live in that property whenever you wanted to. So if you look at the property just as an investment, it's actually a very straightforward deal. You just put money and you host people, or you put it out on Airbnb, you rent it for long-term, short-term rentals, and you get a return. But what we also tried to do is we tried to allow the co-owners to actually book the holiday home and go and live. That, as you correctly said, Rohan, it caused a lot of conflicts because, see, at the end of the day, if you have a holiday home in Goa, you're going there, everyone really just wants to be there on New Year's, right? And if you have four co-owners, all of them who want to be there on New Year's, that obviously creates conflict. So I think because we tried to get the best of both worlds for our co-owners, we couldn't really deliver the best product, which I feel we had the capability to.
That's fascinating just because you set out on the venture with two really good friends of yours. And I think in theory, the idea is really good, right? We're seeing a lot more fractionalized real estate investing, at least in America, even in Canada. I'm hoping that it comes to India at some point. You're speaking a lot in the past tense. We did this. It was like this. Is this a company that you're still kind of pushing the envelope on, or are your friends still working on it? Where are you at in that stage?
No, so actually, when I think right before COVID or in the middle of COVID, we decided to shut down the company. And, because we weren't also, all of us were also working different jobs by then. There were three of us.
Mhm.
All of us by then were working our own jobs. So we decided to shut it down. So it's not really functioning right now.
If you had one piece of advice for any kid, you were pretty young when you started your company. If you have advice for any one kid who's just trying to start their own thing but is intimidated or apprehensive, what would you say to them?
So I would honestly see the my one piece of advice which I've really learned, I think, over the years, especially about business, is don't wait for $1 billion idea or $100 million idea. If you're interested in business, if you're interested in innovating, just start something. Start anything which you want to, and then just try to become better by a little bit every day. And if you just keep doing that, there are many businesses which you can be in where you can be a successful businessman or you can have a successful startup. So a lot of really smart people, I feel, waste time, or not waste time, they are a bit apprehensive to get into business because they feel that they haven't got that $1 billion idea or that next unicorn idea, or they feel that someone's already doing it. Ignore all of that. None of that matters. What actually matters is you just start something, start small or start whatever you're capable of starting. But every day, just work to become a bit better, bit better, bit better at it, and stay at it. And I'm sure anyone can make it.
What's it like starting a business with friends? How does the friendship change over time?
So, at least boys, I can tell you one thing, that at least guys, most of us are always happy around our friends. We're always playing a
Hmm.
sport, or we're always playing some game, or we're just having fun around our friends.
Uh-huh.
It takes a while to learn how to be serious around your friends,
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it does.
which was really a learning curve for us as well, as friends as well. That, okay, fine, we're doing something cool, we're happy, we're interested, we're excited to be working on something. But then there are always times where there's conflict, or there'll be, someone really needs to get serious, someone needs to take leadership and tell, another person what to do. Those times really test your friendship. And I feel that if you are ever joining a business or doing it with your friend, you should do it with a friend which you're used to having fights with, and you're used to having conflicts with, and you're still friends.
Oh, that's good advice. That's interesting. Um, I think we'll be fine then. We've had a decent amount. Uh, um, so your equity investing in that part of your career, was that before or after the Shareka business?
Yeah, so just to put a timeline, so
Uh-huh.
exactly what happened was, while we were running ShareAcre, I went back to law. So
Okay.
I started a thing as a corporate lawyer.
Hmm.
So, so when I was a corporate lawyer, I mean, I shouldn't maybe say this in a public forum, but what happened was, my boss, for some reason, we had a really small fund, but my boss was paying me my salary 1 year in advance. So he was saying that, you stick with me for 1 year, because it was a very
Mm-hmm.
small team, and even he couldn't deal with me or anyone else leaving the firm. So what he would do is he would pay me salary 1 year in advance and expect me to stay for expect me to complete the year. So I mean, while I was also doing my law job, what happened to me was that all of a sudden, for the first time in my life, I had a lot of money altogether in my bank account. And then I'm thinking, okay, now what do I do with this money? I'm just trying to find ways, because I have, like, I was used to having maybe a couple of thousand rupees in my bank account, and suddenly I have 1 year salary in my bank account. And from that, slowly, talking to people, reading books, understanding about investing, understanding about the stock market, just like self-learning this entire thing is how I really got into equity investing.
That's very interesting. So just uh, definition, just so we're on the same page. What exactly is equity investing?
So equity, see, so normally when we speak about investing, we see like either VCs or PEs, right? So what any of that basically is that they invest into a company, which is that they invest into the equity or shares of a company. So what I do really is I don't really limit myself of PE, VC, stock market, anything. I'm just open to investing in any kind of company at all times. So most of my investments are in the stock market. So I do invest in the equities of company, but but just generally investing in any company should be equity investing.
I definitely want to dive deeper into your career being in equity investing, but I want to go back for a second. As you're getting paid that 1 year salary in advance, how did your relationship with money change in that moment?
Yeah, I mean that's a good
It's a good
question.
question.
Because see, most of my life really, for some reason, I was very careful about money. I was very careful about and like for no reason at all. Like I really didn't have a reason to be as careful as I was about money, but I never wanted to spend money, and I wanted to, you know, buy someone something or even buy my girlfriend anything or something. I was happy just saving money and not spending any money. But once I got a lot of money, I mean, one thing obviously became that I mean, I wouldn't say that I was completely alleviated from being careful about money because I was still, I think that became me as a person. But I was still very happy, going and having some good food, buying myself some nice clothes, and buying myself, the best tennis racket there was at that time, buying myself like the best sports equipment I could get my hands on, getting a nice big TV in my room. All those things is exactly what I did. Uh, once I got all that money. But another thing was that once I got all that money, a thing in me is like, okay, now how do I make this more money? Because I'm not really using this money. How do I make this more money? So that's just a constant thing which just kept annoying me, really.
Talk a little bit more about that. I'm gonna ask this question in vain where we're also still pretty young and we're surrounded by a lot of people, I think, especially in America, in Canada. The purpose is how can I make more money, right? For a lot of people, their ultimate drive is I want more dollars in my bank account.
Yeah.
You have gone through the phase in your life where you were in a position where, like you said, you had just a couple of thousand to a position where you had a lot of money. When you actually start making that lot of money, what changes in your approach to your drive and your purpose? Because now you've learned how to make the lot of money.
Correct.
So what changes, and like what would you advise for people out there who are just so laser focused on chasing every dollar they can?
So my honest thing is like one thing which I really realized is again what you were saying, your relationship with money. I wasn't really truthful to myself about how much, like, how important money was really to me. You know, I, and so, like, let's say when you rank something in priority, I at that time wasn't really sure where I would rank, let's say, making wealth in my priority. So at that time, so I would say that once I realized that, making wealth would be really high up there, I wanted to do something which helps me make money. So being a lawyer is good because you make money, okay, because you get paid. Let's say you get paid. But being a lawyer doesn't really teach you how to make a lot of money. To make a lot of money, you have to learn the art really of making money, which for me is completely about investing. So once I realized that is when I really started to myself taking investing seriously.
Uh, you mentioned, um, when you got money, you did like you spent it more generously than you would have before. But you also said, now that I have money, how do I make more money? And so I'm curious if you have set a certain goal or a certain scenario for yourself where after that point you will be content with the amount of money you have, or is if that's even something that's possible. Do we just find meaning and purpose through struggle and the pursuit of something, or do you think there is a point where, okay, I've made this much money, or I have set up this company, or I have made X amount of difference to society, that I am now content, I'm good, I'm happy? Do you think that ever comes? And if it does, do you have a vision for that for yourself?
So actually, that's actually so I think about that a lot, and one thing I've realized is the reason I'm so interested in investing compared to being a lawyer is that, see, as a sportsman, and that's what I identify myself as above everything else, is a sportsman. So being a sportsman, everything is very black and white. You either win a football match or you don't win a football match. You either win a game of tennis or win a point of tennis, or you don't win a point of tennis. That entire winning or losing is on me, and I take full responsibility on that it's on me. But many times when you work or even as a lawyer, what you can do is you present your best arguments, and then there's someone else, no matter how smart or unbiased that other person is, there's someone else who's making a judgment on you, which then bases if you're going to win or if you're going to lose. I hate that. I hate that being a sportsman. So what actually resonates with me about investing is that for me, I don't view it as much as about hard cash, as I view it as like points in a sport which I'm playing. So for me, the money I make is really kind of like the score which I have on this game which everyone's trying to play. So to answer your question, there really won't be enough, because I'm always going to try to, keep beating the person ahead of me, beating the person ahead of me. But now that doesn't mean that I won't like enjoy life and have like the good things in life as well. I'm happy that once I do reach a certain mark, I can, live hopefully a better. I mean, I already live a good life, but hopefully I can just spend some what they call fuck you money around. But still, I think the goal of having more money would never end for me, because for me it's a sport. For me it's a game. So it's really just gamified in my head.
That's one of the most beautifully articulated statements I've ever heard about money. When you were speaking about that, when you spoke about the fuck you money, have you watched Billions?
I watched a few episodes, bro.
It's so fitting for everything you're doing, but there's a specific line where the entire concept of the show is that he's a hedge fund billionaire, and there's the district attorney is chasing him because he just has a lot of money. And there's a certain line where he looks at the district attorney when he's about to buy a $70 million home, and he's like, what's the point of having fuck you money if you can never say fuck you? And he buys the house the next day. So it just took me back to that. But I want to dive a bit deeper. I feel like you have a very, very good mindset when it comes to your relationship with money. You've been able to develop that over a period of time. Is there contentment in life when it comes to money? I'm being very targeted to money here. I want to know if you truly can be content, or like you said, I'll always want more, I'll always want to be ahead of the other person, I'll always want to win the next point in the game.
So I honestly think contentment for me would come with the rest of my life. So I could be content with my family, with my house, with what I'm doing as a career. I would be content with. But as I said, that the number in my bank account or the number in my Zerodha account is something I would never be content with. That I'm always willing to risk 100% of to make 100% gain. So,
You're willing to risk 100% off.
yeah.
Does that not scare you? Why is your risk appetite so big?
So, so actually, the way I like to invest, many would see as very risky. I invest all my money, 100% of everything I own is always invested. And all of that is always invested in not more than 4 stocks. 4 stocks.
Okay.
So now, really, what you have to find in the world is places where you don't have to diversify and still not be risky. So what I try to do is I try to concentrate my wealth in places which I have full knowledge of, and I feel that the gain is going to be so much more than the potential loss. So really, I feel the trick in investing is to concentrate as much as you can without risk. So once you can do that, I feel that's a that's the way to go to actually make a lot of cash.
Why are you so confident in yourself about, oh, I have good knowledge about this. I'm probably right. I'll risk all of my money. What gives you that much confidence?
See, so I won't say I'm that confident in myself as much as I'm confident in my abilities, or like I'm confident that I understand what my competencies are. I understand that I'm good at this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing, and I'll never do something which is beyond my competency. So, for example, I understand one thing. I understand that by being a lawyer, I have a competitive advantage over other people who are investing. My competitive advantage is that I can read way more, that I do read way more than anyone else is reading, or any other person who's done a CA, CFA, because all of them have a completely different approach to investing. They may look at more analytics, they may look at more financials, they may have their algorithms in place when it comes to all of this. But one thing which they won't do is research about a company, like about everything related to that company. So that's what I do. Before I make any investment, I research for at least 30 days. Like without telling the management or telling anyone, I make sure that I go to the company's factories. I speak to the workers in the company. Then after that, I do checks, I do visits of like their factories or whatever their outlets are. And I do research for at least 30 days minimum before I put even a single penny in. But when I put that penny in, I'm assured that I can also put 20-25% of my net worth in that company. And that's what I eventually end up doing.
That is unbelievable.
That scares me.
That's really unbelievable because there's a book called Deep Work by a guy called Cal Newport, and he speaks to what you're doing. You are the poster child for it. He just believes in the concept that we live in a world where there's a lot of shallow work that people can do because of the distractions around us. And so to be able to commit yourself to that level of nuanced detail before making a decision is very impressive. Also a new learning for me, which is cool. I'm curious though. Yeah.
Sorry. So, I was just saying one other thing is that, there have been times where I've, let's say, invested, or I know people who've invested in 8 or 10 companies. Even that's a lower number. Most people invest in like 40, 50 companies. But even, let's say, fine, someone's invested in 40 companies. Even that person knows what his top 4, top 5 picks are. Out of those 40 companies, what are your top 5 picks. The only difference is that I trust those top 5 picks enough to not even look at those other 35 companies and just invest everything in those five.
Have you ever invested maybe earlier?
So, I mean, luckily, I feel the mistakes that I made very early on. So all the mistakes which I made with less money. I mean, at that time it seemed like a lot of money, but now looking back, that it's really not that much. So I did make a lot of mistakes, and a lot of those mistakes were related to me panicking, and me related to being too attached to my money. So, for example, if I would invest in a company and that company's stocks are down 15% or 20%, I would just panic. I'm like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't trust myself. And I would sell those companies. And then 1 month or 2 months later, I would see that those shares have recovered. So that's actually where I lost money. But luckily, again, I just tried to improve myself a bit day by day. And now I feel, luckily, like touch wood, for the last 2.5, 3 years, I really haven't been down on any investment I've made.
Wow.
That is incredible. I'm gonna start coming to you for more investment advice. But talk to us a little bit more. Last week is on this equity investing topic, where for anyone who's slightly earlier on in their career, is just starting to get their hands on money, wants to get into it, what would you say to them as they're kind of approaching the very vast and intimidating topic that is equity and stock investing?
Yeah. Yeah. So actually, one thing, even generally, I feel if anyone wants to get into anything, the number one thing they should try to do is get the best mentors you can. So, because there's a lot of fluff out there, there's a lot of people just trying to sell you garbage, sell you rubbish. But once you identify that, okay, I want to be exactly like this person, and what then you need to do is just try to learn as much as you can from that one person. So for me in investing, that was the god of investing, Warren Buffett. So, even so, Warren Buffett started in early 1960s. He started. He bought. Uh, he bought shares of Berkshire Hathaway at like $3.5. He bought the entire company for that much, and now I think one share is like $200,000. So the thing is that when there is a person like that who has written so much material and spoken so much, which just teaches young investors and early stage investors how to invest, I feel no one should look anywhere else. Because there are hundreds of different people trying to sell you books, trying to sell you their own investment philosophies. But Warren Buffett is the real deal. He is, honestly, I'm telling you, he is God walking on earth. He's the God of investing who's walking on earth right now. And the best thing someone can do is just read all the books written about him, read all the letters to shareholders which he's written, and on YouTube, just watch all the interviews he's given, and you would be ready to start investing your money.
Doesn't he preach diversification into more than 4 stocks?
No, so actually, what Warren Buffett preaches is not really diversification. It's actually knowing what you invest in. So what he basically says is that imagine when you're 18, you have to buy a car,
Mhm.
and that car is going to last you for the rest of your life. What is the car that you're going to buy? Okay, so at that time you really think about it. It may not be in like, you definitely won't want to cheap out on that car
Mhm.
because it's going to last you your whole life. You definitely aren't going to want to buy a Ferrari or like a really high-end car, because if something small happens to it, you're gone. What you would want to buy is a reliable car. It
Yes.
won't be the flashiest, it won't even be the cheapest, but it'll just be the most reliable car. And in that sense is how he says that you should also approach investing. You should buy the most reliable companies, And even if you just buy one of those companies, you'll be good for the rest of your life.
That's good advice. So you said you like you do all this extensive research, you visit the factories, you talk to the employees. That makes me assume that these aren't blue chip stocks that you're investing in, the smaller companies with a higher risk but higher potential return. And so, like, just given this, it seems like you're very interested in the space, whether that be for a genuine interest of business or the startups that you're investing in, or just the genuine interest in money. It seems like you would enjoy to have your own hedge fund. Is that something you thought about? Is that something you want to do?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So the reason why I'm doing my MBA is because in India, to start your own fund, you either have to have a MBA, a CA, or CFA. So my goal at the end of this MBA is to be able to actually go back to India and start a fund of my own, albeit
Nice.
small, because I'm
Mhm.
not sure how many people would want to give me, their wealth to invest.
You can take my
But
money.
that's something I want to do. I
I'm
want to
in.
start small, start whatever, and just start building it up myself.
Interesting. And so, why India?
So India, I feel, okay, if you want my honest answer,
Mm-hmm.
I feel in India there aren't too many very smart people who are looking at the space which I'm looking at. So, so I feel India has really smart people who are looking at blue chip stocks and even maybe mid cap stocks. There aren't really smart people who are trying to analyze that what is going to be the next, let's say, stock which goes up 40x or 50x or 100x. I think that is a good space to be in. And also in India, another thing is that the level of analysis into stocks isn't really the same as it is in America. So in America, it's very difficult, in my opinion, to find a undervalued stock or a growth stock which is really going to skyrocket.
Yeah.
That's not the same in India.
Oh,
And
interesting.
another thing is that I feel India is right now, in this space. I don't know if it's good or bad or how it's going to work out, but it's in this space where suddenly doing business is becoming a lot easier. So small, competent, ambitious business owners are suddenly finding it a lot easier to actually conduct their business than they used to 5 or 10 years ago. This is partly because of UPI. It's partly because of maybe because of certain regulations which have come up. But businessmen are finding it a lot easier. So now I think we will see a lot of small town but competent and ambitious businessmen really coming up and making huge companies in India.
You think that the startup ecosystem in India is likely one of the most exponentially emerging ones in the world right now?
So sorry, can you repeat that? I think a line went.
Would you say that the startup ecosystem in India is one of the most exponentially emerging markets in the world right now?
I think so. I think
Yeah.
it is. I think this startup ecosystem in India, I feel currently we haven't even seen the tip of it, of what's going to come. Because now I think what's happened is even culturally there's been a shift in India. I'm not sure, Rohan, if you've seen or if you felt this since the last time, or like I remember we were playing tennis in COVID, and after that I think you've come just a few times back to India. But now I feel there's a way bigger demand for premiumization and premium products. So earlier, what used to happen, I feel, is that only the big companies could provide affordable products to the Indian population because it's only those big companies which really had the economies of scale to be able to really subsidize the products. But now the Indian consumer, especially I'll say the metropolitan Indian consumer, prefers to pay a premium for a good experience. And that is going to really change the dynamics of Indian companies. because it won't really give, I mean, pricing won't be the only thing which big companies can assert their dominance with over little companies, over, smaller companies. So now there's a huge space for other companies to actually come up to fight for that premium segment.
Yeah. I think we definitely are seeing more of that in the Indian market. So even the couple times I have been back and the conversations I've been able to have, I'm definitely sensing that that's the theme. Do you feel though that with that there'll be lesser disruption and more premiumization of already existing product, or do you think there'll be more innovative disruptors that come into the market?
See, I think with premiumization, what also comes naturally with premiumization is the creation of niches. So
Mm-hmm.
each market is going to come with its own different niche, which is going to be dominated by a startup or by a completely different company. So there's yeah. So with premiumization, disruption will also come, because there will be so many different opportunities for Indian businesses to just exploit, because the number of consumers for each product is going to be so much higher than it ever was. And I just see this going up and up for, the next at least couple of decades.
I think I do agree with a lot of what you said there, and part of that is also a lot of the people we're surrounded by are trying to get a lot deeper into the startup ecosystem now, especially in India with the growth that it has. Is there, if you had to pick one niche for the next 5 years that is going to disrupt at the most rapid pace, what would you say that's going to be?
So, I mean, being a sports person, one niche which I feel definitely is there for it to be exploited is premium sportswear for Indians, specifically designed for the Indian climate. Because there is Gymshark, there is Lululemon, Nike, and Adidas are obviously always there, but it's yeah, and I know that Rohan's a big fan of Gymshark and Asics because he's always wearing those, but uh, I feel there's definitely a space for an Indian brand to uh, make clothes with fabric specific for the Indian climate. And I think that niche, if someone is able to exploit it, they're going to be a multi-billion-dollar company soon.
Fair.
Yeah. And if you know anyone who's doing that, you let me know so I can invest in, invest in that.
Isn't Ranbir Kapoor just started a new company, which is athleisure in India?
Yeah, so I think there are people who are just, doing it using brand names and using a model which already works in America. But
Mm-hmm.
I feel, uh, so for example, there's HRX, which is Hrithik Roshan's company. There's what you're saying, Ranbir Kapoor started his own company. But it needs to be focused on a specific product for the Indian market.
I think this is the perfect time to shift gears. Do you do you feel like a lot of these thoughts came more into your head when you started preparing for your Ironman and realizing that the clothes you were wearing were just not fit for the conditions that you were running in, cycling in, trying to swim in?
Yeah, definitely. I mean that. I mean that is definitely. I mean this thought is definitely what came into my head while preparing for Ironman. Because see, for example, even if you look at Nike shoes,
Mm-hmm.
okay, Nike shoes, what they do is they make running comfortable, but running can't possibly be comfortable at 45-degree weather. So the thing is, now
Fair
what do
enough.
you do? Because Nike, the way that they've chosen to make running comfortable is to improve their sole technology. But
Yes.
what their sole technology also does is that it heats up your foot when it's really hot outside. And in India, I mean, 10 months of the year, it's really hot outside, you know? So I still feel, so I mean, exactly what you said, that is a big reason why someone to come up with an India specific brand.
Why wouldn't Nike seize that opportunity and try to get full dominance in India by just changing those things, and then they can outcompete with Adidas and every other Reebok, whatever other companies are making shoes. Um, it like I see what you mean by there is an opportunity for a new company to start and do that, but then isn't it just extremely easy for Nike to just not let you do that?
Yeah, no, see, so it's easy for Nike literally to do anything. It was easy for Nike to, come up with barefoot running shoes or come up with extra padded running shoes like Hoka came up with. So Nike, for them, will obviously be easy to do everything. But I definitely believe number one is Nike would never want to start. I mean, India is really not a priority for Nike. They get a minimal amount of their total sales from India. No research and development factory of Nike is set up anywhere outside North America or Europe. So I mean, it is a good chance, and Nike will obviously, if they ever see it as a good market for them, they'll obviously enter. But just being a first mover in a $10 billion industry is a good enough reason for anyone to, enter that industry.
No, sure, that makes sense. And as soon as I said that question, I also realized that no, the only reason startups are as successful as they are is because they iterate quickly, and there's a lot less, for a lack of a better word, bullshit to deal with, as compared to when there's a bigger company, they move slower, everything has a process, and that kind of just ruins everything. So no, that
Right,
makes a lot
and
of
yeah.
sense. But yeah, coming back to the Ironman, so what made you decide to do one?
Yeah, so as much as anything, I really thought I hadn't. Okay, so I'm not sure if this happens with you guys, but do you? And I have a feeling this happened with Rohan because I know him a lot better. Is that do you always keep telling yourself how good you are and how how hardworking you are, how fit you've been able to maintain as compared to everyone else, how good you are at tennis. If you practice more tennis, how good you could become. I'm sure that you guys say that to yourself.
Absolutely.
Sometimes, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So with me, what was happening is for a long time, I was saying it to myself, but I felt like I hadn't proven it to myself for a really long time. And I needed a really difficult challenge to actually prove to myself that that it's legit, that this inner voice, which is telling me that I'm a hard person, is a legit voice. So that was really the only reason. I wanted to take up the toughest challenge I could to
Mm-hmm.
just show myself what I can do and just convince myself that, I am capable of doing the things that I set myself out to do.
That's
Just for context for the viewers, can you tell them what an Ironman entails?
Okay. Okay, so an Ironman starts with 3.8 kilometers of open water swimming. After that you go directly onto a bicycle and you have to cycle for 180 kilometers. You put your bike down and you realize that you're on the start line of a full marathon. So, and to give a bit more context of the Ironman which I did, so I mean there are many people who have done this and there are many Indians who do it in different places. But the toughest thing which you never really want to do is number one, get into really cold water while swimming, and number two is have really high mountains to climb while cycling. But my Ironman, which was located in Thun, Switzerland, was the swimming was in 14-degree water, which is like literally there were snow-capped mountains all around me. There was a massive lake, and I was swimming in that lake. And for the cycling section, I had to go up an elevation of 2,400 meters. So, I mean, to give you some context, I think I had done the math from Delhi to Shimla is about 1,300 meters. So that's, I mean, you have to go 180 kilometers straight, but also 2,400 kilometers vertical. So if for any one of you who've gone cycling and hit a small hill or have to go over a flyover, you can tell how difficult that is. So the Ironman at Thun is supposed to be maybe in the top 7 or 8 most difficult Ironmans. I was This year I was the only Indian who competed and obviously the only Indian who finished. For the last two times, I think there have been a couple of Indians who have attempted it but not finished it. But before that, I think 4 years back, there was one or two people who had completed it. Yeah.
Oh, I really like the rationality behind your thought of why you wanted to do it. Is that you always thought, oh, I can do this, I can do that, I'm this good, or whatever, and being proud of yourself. But there's that fine line between like extreme self-confidence and just delusion. And I think that fine line is only based on evidence, right? And so you went out there
Right.
to find evidence for it, and that's very inspiring. Um, in the build-up for the Ironman, how did you prepare for it? How did your workouts change as compared to when you were just playing tennis before that? And did you ever just feel like giving up while practicing, preparing for it?
Yeah. So when I started preparing for my Ironman to when I completed the Ironman, the complete timeline which I gave myself was 4 months, which is really nothing. I mean, most people who even attempt their first Ironman have been training for at least 3 years. At least 3 years, because what you really need is you need to get miles under your feet, you need to get miles on the saddle, and you need to get miles in swimming, just so you know your body is used to putting itself through that much. But I just had myself 4 months, and that was really just another challenge which made this entire thing a lot tougher. But in my mind, what it was a culmination of everything I have learned in my 25 years of playing sports. So just my relationship with my body, of how I thought that was, I just, in some way, in mentally, there's like it all happens automatically, but mentally, I feel there's some science behind it. And I don't think I can explain that science because that science is self taught and it's like muscle memory by playing sports over the last 25 years. So a lot of my training was just based on what I felt right. And now that's obviously not, it's not like the right schedule for most people to follow. But literally every morning I would wake up and I would be like, okay, fine, where am I lacking? What do I need to do? And how is my body feeling? And every morning I would just, like come up with what I think is the best training method for that day. And also for my swimming, for example, so like cycling and running, all of us kind of know. Swimming is a completely different ball game because you're in water. You literally can't breathe for more than 2 seconds. Every, let's say, 10 or 15 seconds is when you can literally take a full breath. So swimming is something which I really had to learn because I was used to, swimming in the World Spa pool, which is 17 meters, and doing a couple of laps and having fun and, like flipping a coin and finding that coin. But I never really did full on swimming training, or I never really tried to improve my swimming style. What I had to do for at least the first 1.5 months is that every day I would be in the pool for 1 to 1.5 hours, just trying to get my swimming stamina, my freestyle going all right, teaching myself how to breathe correctly, teaching myself how to breathe on both sides, getting my kicking right. So that again, like I didn't have any coach. I just kept on, just like self teaching myself. I would take like tips from other people who I thought were good swimmers. I would just ask them, okay, what's wrong with me? What do I need to improve? So swimming was a big challenge because I think 1 month, I think for the first week, I wasn't able to do more than 100 meters without just, like scrambling for the edge of the pool and gasping for air. And even after the first month, I couldn't maybe do more than 4 or 500 meters without really, really struggling. And 4 or 500 meters may be sounding less, but when you're in the pool and when your face is in the water for 12 to 15 minutes, it feels like forever. So, like that was a big challenge for me, and that was something I really had to work on for a lot of time.
In that learning curve, I've spoken to a couple other people who've attempted half Ironmans, completed half Ironmans. Swimming seems to be the biggest challenge for I think most people. I don't quite think we grow up spending a lot of time swimming unless you're competing or trying to do it at a higher level. So I can fully understand the sentiment. Aside from that, though, in that 4 month commitment you made, what were some of the biggest challenges that you had to go through?
So, one one challenge was always a mental challenge, which is like, where am I? Because if I've never done a full Ironman, and I know for a fact I'm not going to do a full Ironman before I actually go for the event, one was that constant question that how is my body going to feel after 10 hours of exertion, after 12 hours of exertion, after 14 hours of exertion. So you try to simulate that bit by bit every day, but every day is kind of a different day. Some days it's happening easily, and some days, no matter how much you're pushing, you just aren't moving. You're just not being able to run faster, you're not being able to cycle faster, and stuff just isn't working out. So that is a huge mental challenge, that every day you have to tell yourself that, no matter how the training is today, it's better than not training at all. And a second challenge would obviously be trying to do this entire thing in Delhi in the peak of summers.
Wow.
Because, see, for example, swimming was still okay because I can obviously swim in an indoor pool. But if I have to cycle, for me to make any improvement, I have to cycle at least 130 kilometers. That has to take me 5 hours, 6 hours minimum. So even if I start, even let's say, like one way that we normally beat the Delhi heat is we wake up super early, and let's say we wake up at 6 o'clock and we finish our workout, we finish our tennis game or football game by 8 o'clock. You wake up at 6 o'clock and you have to cycle 140 kilometers. You're cycling till 1 p.m. And at 1 p.m. is 42, 43 degrees Celsius. So doing that in Delhi, similar thing for running. In running, your number one is okay, where do you run? There aren't any jogging tracks where you know that you'll be safe. There's no car, which has a chance of running over you. There are no monkeys, there are no dogs. There's nothing like that. So there are a lot of challenges, just because of the fact you're in Delhi. There's heat, it's a bit, and it's just not equipped to allow people to do the Ironman.
Is is there something that you would have done differently if you did those 4 months again?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Is there something you would have done differently if you did those 4 months of prep again?
I don't think so. I think uh, I, I think I got lucky, and I think I prepared well. 4 months. I mean, the only thing I would do differently is maybe prepare for a bit longer than 4 months. But if I have to go back and have 4 months again, I don't think there's anything I could possibly change. I think I got it pretty spot on.
Clearly, you finished an Ironman, which is probably one of the most unbelievable like physical feats that exists. What does No, let me actually reframe this. You've been a sportsman all your life. You've played 3-hour tennis matches. You've played football at a school and college level. That's great. How did your understanding of discipline change when you started preparing for an Ironman and actually going through those 15 hours of doing the Ironman?
Yeah. So actually, discipline in while preparing for the Ironman is a monster compared to the discipline you need for football or tennis, because football and tennis are intrinsically fun.
Mm-hmm.
So the discipline you really need is to be able to wake up in the morning and show up for practice. In Ironman or training for an Ironman, that is not even the first step. You show up for practice, but then the discipline you need to actually complete your training is a whole other ballgame. Because there were times, where I would make like a training schedule for myself. And I would write, and I would just be sitting in office. I would be bored. I would be lazy, and I'm just writing. I'm just writing numbers on an Excel sheet. And then I wake up, and let's say it's Monday, and I've written, okay, on Saturday I'm going to run 35 kilometers. And then I wake up on Saturday, I'm like, okay, what do I have in store for today? And I see, and I'm like, what have I done? Why have I written 35 kilometers? Who is seriously going to do this? Who is going to, like, how am I going to put myself through 3.5, 4 hours of running just because I've written that on Monday on this, random Excel sheet? So the discipline you need to actually complete the workouts which you set yourself to do, it's a whole other ballgame.
What did you learn about yourself through this process?
So, I mean, more than myself, I also think generally for most people, one thing I learned is that the human body is very, number one, is very adaptable, and number two, it's very convincible. You can adapt yourself to literally do anything. If you can adapt yourself to going not running more than 1.5 hours, which in itself is a huge amount, to exerting yourself for 15 hours, you can adapt yourself to doing anything. And second is convincing. It depends a lot about what you're telling your body. Your body obviously sends you signals that you're tired, that you're hurt, that you haven't got enough rest. But it all depends on what your mind is telling your body. And if you can convince your body that you need to stay at it, and you need to keep going, you need to finish this workout for a purpose which may or may not exist. I think that is one thing which I really learned, not just about myself, but I think everyone can replicate that.
Do you think that doing an Ironman is an isolated endeavor, or you feel like also being at home, being around the support system you had was like very,
Sorry,
very
I
crucial?
couldn't hear you clearly.
Was the support system that you had around you very, very crucial in you actually getting to the end of the 4 weeks, 4 months?
So, I mean, the real support system I needed was for my people around me to just be understanding of the fact that I've chosen this probably arbitrary, insane goal, and understanding of the fact that I may not be able to spend as much time with them as I would have liked to, or they would have liked me to. Because there were times, when, like my family, for example, there were times where I was waking up at 5 a.m. to go for a swim, and coming back, and coming back, as soon as I come back from work, I go for a run, or I go cycling, and I just don't see them the entire week. A week goes by, and even when I see them, I'm tired. I'm just sleeping, or I don't want to get up. I don't want to do anything. So the support system I really needed, which I'm lucky I got, was that my family, my friends, all these guys were really understanding, and really, like, they motivated me to get it done. Because somehow I thought that this was just my goal and I was the only one who really cared about achieving that. But slowly, once I tried to achieve it, I just realized that how much my family and my friends actually cared about me and cared about me achieving that goal, which was a huge boost.
Do you think that they were inspired in those 4 months to actually do something different in their own approaches?
I mean, I would hope so. I would hope so, you know. I would hope that they were a bit inspired, and I hope that, and you know, like the best stories were when someone would tell me, "Oh, you know, I saw you do this, so I went for a swim," or
Mm-hmm.
I saw your reel of you cycling 160 kilometers, so I signed up for a race." And there were so many people who did that, and each
Yeah.
time I heard that story, I'm like, "Damn!" Like you know, I'm just in a room or I'm running alone, but even if it just makes a small difference to someone that they can just go for a jog or get motivated to complete their workout, that's like something I never expected. So it was a big bonus.
I can personally vouch for that. Where I've grown up a sportsman, so has he. The one thing that I never liked doing was running aimlessly on a road. I felt like Forrest Gump. It just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And when you started training for Ironman and even talking about it, I have a lot of friends in New York who love running. It's a running city. And so one day I said, you know what? Like, if my friend who I play tennis with on a daily basis can commit to doing an Ironman, I
Yeah.
can definitely get over the mental hump of not wanting to run on a road. And
Yeah.
so it's when I did my first half marathon, it's when I did my first 20K. And so definitely what you were doing was inspiring, whether you heard it or you didn't. I think there was a lot more people inspired than even you can imagine. Uh,
Yeah.
and you've put yourself in like the Hall of Fame of Indians. You've done Ironman in the hardest place in the world. So
Damn, bro. And I honestly feel, you know, when you try to aim for the sky or aim for some impossible dream, I feel it really gets everyone together, everyone
yeah,
around you together. So it's really incredible. And I think that's one thing which I really did learn from this Ironman.
within those actual 15 hours of doing it, talk to us a little bit about the mentality that you have to go through so many. I'm sure so many different things are going on in your head in those 15 hours. How do you
Yeah.
actually come out at the end of those 15 hours still standing?
Yeah. So, from the mental aspect, so I mean, again, just to give maybe even the viewers some context of what actually happened in that race, it wasn't even simply just completing those three disciplines. What happened and how the day started was okay. Fine. Maybe this story will be longer than it should. But if I just give you how a couple of other things is that the most thing I was scared about when I was training was cycling. Because with cycling, what can happen is that you can get into an accident. And if you get into an accident, which is even a slightly bad accident, you're toast. You know, you're gone. So somehow, through my 4 months of training, I've avoided getting into any accidents. 3 days before my Ironman, I'm like, I need to do a practice cycle run. I need to go cycling just to practice going up and down hills. So I go up this hill and I'm feeling good. You know, I'm feeling I've just overtaken a couple of really strong cyclists who were just cycling on the road. I'm feeling strong, and now it's like time to come down the hill. So I'm coming down the hill, and from nowhere it starts raining. And this is 3 days before my Ironman, and it starts raining, and I'm just telling myself, okay, just be careful, don't crash. And I come down the hill, I'm off the hill, and as soon as I'm off the hill, I hit this, you know, part of the road, and I fly off my bike. 3 days before my Ironman, I'm sitting on the road with my hands on my head. My head, it like feels like it's concussed, like everything's like moving, everything's shaking. I'm shaking uncontrollably. My elbows are fully bleeding. My knees are fully bleeding. I look back and I see a this big piece of skin just lying on the road. And I'm looking at myself. I'm like, Nirbhay, you're such an idiot. What have you done? And you know, after all of this, after all this training, are you going to be able to complete? Are you even going to be able to get on the start line after all of this? So whatever, I get back, I get patched up, I feel better. I go to the start line. So at the start line, okay, fine. So Thun, the water is supposed to be cold, but it's last year, the year before I did it, the water was about 19 to 20 degrees, which is basically to give people context that if it's like a cold day, it's like an autumn day when you jump into a pool and you know the pool is a bit cold, but you're still fine. You can move around a bit and you get warmed up. The night before the Ironman, there was a thunderstorm, and that thunderstorm didn't stop till the event started. So when we and in the Ironman, like generally in the world, every year about I think 6 to 10 deaths occur. People die, and all those deaths
Over
occur
the course
during.
within the Ironman itself.
Correct. No, so like the Ironman has many events.
Oh. Yeah.
On average, about 6 to 10 deaths occur overall in a year, and all of those deaths happen in the swimming stage. And that either happens because mostly that happens is because the water is too cold, people get hypothermia, and they just can't make it. So any temperature, if the water temperature is below 14 degrees, you have to cancel this. You have to cancel the swim. So you only do the cycling and the running. So the I get there, there's a thunderstorm happening, and we are hoping that the water is not less than 14 degrees. And I was actually hoping it's like 15, 16 degrees. So it's not too cold also. And everyone's hoping that the swim doesn't get cancelled. But they announce that the water temperature is exactly 14 degrees and the swim is not getting cancelled. Okay? But 14 degrees is like, imagine the coldest winter day in Delhi and you decide to jump into the water. That is about 15 and a half degrees. Now imagine spending 1.5 hours in that water. 1.5 hours you're spending in that water. So, like, that level of cold that my body felt while I was doing the swimming is like unexplainable. Imagine you're swimming and you're shivering at the same time. You can't feel your nose, you can't feel your fingers, you can't feel your ears, and like it's like as cold as it can get, and you're there for 1.5 hours. So after that 1.5 hours got over and somehow I got through the swim, I did it in 1 hour 35 minutes and the cutoff is 2.5 hours. And I got through to the swim. Because it was so cold, they had created these heating rooms for people to just go and get changed. And I go into the heating room, and it's like a war scene in a film is happening. There are people on stretchers shivering like beyond belief. There are nurses, there are ambulances coming, there are people on drips, there are people on those silver sheets just getting warm. And like it's so scary. And I'm there and I'm trying to take out, so I was wearing a wetsuit. I was trying to take out my wetsuit, and the chain of my wetsuit was behind. And I'm putting my hand at the back trying to find the chain. And I look at my hand and it's shaking uncontrollably. It's shaking like this much. So, and I have no control over my hand. So for a good half an hour, I'm just sitting on the floor of that heating room trying to get my wetsuit off because I was that cold. And at that time, so like after half an hour, I walk out and I think, okay, I take my wetsuit off, I'm ready, and I walk out and I'm ready to get my cycle. But as soon as I walk out of that heating room, that cold again comes to me because even outside is cold. And I was shaking to a level that I couldn't stand. Like I took maybe 10 steps out and I ran back in. And those next 5 minutes were mentally the most challenging 5 minutes I think I've ever, or maybe not ever, but at least until now I've had in my life. Is just trying to convince myself that Nirbhay, if you don't get out of this room right now, you aren't going to finish this Ironman and you're going to DNF because you're too cold. And that's not a good enough excuse for you to DNF. That was me for 5 minutes just trying to convince myself to get out. So, I mean, yeah, mentally challenging that, like, like I wouldn't say any of the three disciplines were challenging, but it was that time between swimming and getting onto the cycle, which I was like, that that was a tough one. That was a tough place to be.
What about the injuries and the piece of skin that was falling off? Like, how did that not, was that not big enough of an issue compared to everything else that you just forgot about it? Did that bother you? Like, I'm still not over you falling off your bike and almost concussed and all bloody and everything. Like, this is wild.
Yeah, yeah,
How did you
yeah.
deal
No,
with the
so
injuries?
so actually, one good thing which happened was that before my event, I was getting a bit anxious, and because of that, I wanted to continuously be not continuously, but every day I wanted to do some amount of running, some amount of cycling, and all of that. But because of that accident, it forced me to be on bed rest for the next 3 days. I didn't move for those next 3 days. So then, when I was at the start line, I felt fresh. I felt like, I felt like a newborn baby who's never trained a day in his life and is ready to go and do this one event. So it kind of worked out. I mean, I like to look at it, I like to look at the silver lining, but it kind of worked out at the
Well,
end.
that's really interesting. For the swimming part specifically, so it seems like it was the most challenging one and probably the hardest to train because you're suddenly swimming in a lake that's very cold, it's open water, whereas I'm guessing when you practice, it's in a
Yeah.
pool, so you said spa was 17 meters, let's say you even get a 50-meter pool. You're every now and then you're kicking off the wall, you're touching the side, like you might stand, your feet might touch the floor. They sound like small things, but over the course of 2 hours of swimming,
Yeah.
that can add up. So, what was that experience for you? Like, did your training in swimming translate well? If you could do that part differently, would you?
So, one really I mean, anyways, I thought when I was entering that Ironman that I didn't have the enough experience to do an Ironman. But once I started the swimming is when I really realized how less experience I actually had. Because everyone who attempts an Ironman has done multiple open water swims. And you're absolutely right, Ribber, when open water swimming cannot really be compared to swimming in a pool. Because more than anything, like sometimes what happens is you go on a beach, and I'm sure this happens to most people even watching, and you just try to swim, as far as you can. And there comes a point where you look back and you just get terrified of how far the shore actually is. So, and over here, when you have to go, let's say 1.9 kilometers straight into straight into water, and you're looking back and you can't even see the land anymore, it's so scary, it's so daunting. And I had only done one open water swim before, which was in some small lake in Faridabad, which really wasn't the same thing. And yeah, so
Not at
that's
all.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, swimming in open water really doesn't I mean, swimming in a pool doesn't translate to swimming in open water because in a pool, you can focus on your stroke, you can focus on your breathing. There aren't waves which are coming at you which are affecting your breathing. There aren't 15 other people all around you who are just trying to grab your ankle, someone's hitting your head, someone's hand is on your back, because no one knows where they're going. Because when you're doing freestyle, your head is underwater, and when it's not underwater, it's either on the left side or
It
the right
is.
side. You never know what's straight. So people are just banging into each other. The water is freezing. There are waves coming from everywhere. You don't know if you're going straight or if you're not going straight. So another thing was in open water swimming, what you do is you create certain markers. So you say that okay, from this part to this part, I'm going to follow that mountain. And then I'll take a right and I'll follow this mountain. So the day before my Ironman, I go and I create my markers. Okay, because I know the course. I'm like, okay, I need to go towards that mountain, that straight. Then I turn right, I go towards that mountain. I reach the start line on the next day. There's a thunderstorm, and there's no visibility. Those mountains don't exist anymore. So you're
Oh
literally
shit.
swimming blind. You don't know if you're going straight, if you're not going straight. You don't know you don't know where you are. So actually, in
Wow.
my swim, which was supposed to be 3,800 meters, turned out to be 4,200 meters because I was going zigzag, which is natural. So I went 400 meters zigzag because I just didn't know if I was
Wow.
going straight or not.
Just when it wasn't bad enough, he added an extra 400 meters to his 15 hours.
Yeah.
Dude, when you're,
Wow.
I have two questions, but first, just even committing to an Ironman, doing an Ironman, being there, did you have people who just looked at you and said, you are out of your mind and you won't be able to do it or you can't do it?
So I guess I hope that people who know me didn't think that,
Yeah.
because I would hope that they would have a certain image of me. But I mean, I would hope that. But my parents definitely thought I was out of my mind. My friends were more encouraging, that they said that, okay, I know that you can get this, and I know that if you commit your mind, you can do this. But people who I told, like random people who I was telling that, okay, I'm preparing for an Ironman and I have only 4 months. So I mean, this open water swim which I did with the Tri Club India. So I mean, that was just the one time where I trained with them. But a lot of those people were training for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and had just a few of them had done half Ironmans. None of them had even touched or tried to do a full Ironman. And then I come along and I'm like, this is my first open water swim. I've only been training for 2.5 months, and I'm attempting a full Ironman in 1.5 more months. These guys thought, like, who is, like, you're like, who does this guy think he is? We've been doing this forever, and we've been training 3, 4 times a week for the last so many years. Like, who is this guy? What's he doing? So I mean, I got a lot of that from people who didn't really know me. But yeah.
Do you feel like you had some kind of genetic gift when it came to your level of fitness to even be able to complete it in 4 months? How much of it was nature versus nurture?
Okay. I
I
think,
don't think any of this can be nature, man.
yeah, so no, so I honestly think the genetic gift maybe which I have is just the grit, just not giving up, and just being consistent. Like, Rohan, we know this. We've been playing tennis 2 hours, 3 hours a day with no goal in mind, just because we want to be consistent with playing tennis. I've seen you guys go to the gym just because you want to be consistent in going to the gym. So that's literally been me for the last more than 20 years. So I think that's really, the one thing which I feel really helps me do all this.
That you were born with grit. So, do you think that is something that is genetic? You're just lucky you have it or you don't, or do you think that can actually be developed over the course of your life?
So I think grit definitely is a learned ability. You have to really put it through the test, and you have to
Mhm.
put yourself in situations where you willingly are going to test your grit,
Yeah.
and then you have to see how you react. So yeah, I don't think I was born with it, but I feel that whenever my grit was tested, I came out on top. So because of that, I feel I have, a sort of knowledge of myself that I'm not going to give up.
Do you think that has a lot to do with the way your parents brought you up, encouraged you to do harder things, or supported you when you did harder things, or like what in your life made you face these challenges? Like whenever anything challenged your grit, what made you really double down on it and make sure that you came out the other side the way you wanted and you didn't regret anything before that?
Yeah. I think, I think just maybe it's a bit different than what you're asking me, but I feel
Mm-hmm.
that when it comes to confidence, I feel we're just sitting, I feel many people are confident of their abilities when they're just, like sitting around, or when they're just talking. So, I mean, like when you're sitting somewhere and you just create a scenario in your head that, okay, if I had to do this, I'm sure I could do this. correct. But I feel one thing which has really maybe naturally come to me every time is that I'm not always the most confident while I'm talking or while I'm not doing something. But I feel when I am in the process of doing that thing, that's actually when people lose most of their confidence. That when they realize that okay, I'm up against an opponent who's way better than me, or I've taken up a challenge which is something I just can't complete. That's when people lose their confidence. But I feel that's the time where I actually get more confidence in my abilities. That when I'm playing someone's really better than me, or if I'm 5-1, or if I'm like 5 love down in a game, or in a set of tennis, that's when I'm like, okay, I know I can come back. And that's when I really, I'm able to convince myself. So I feel it's the confidence you have when you're actually doing a task and you're actually down at that task is what really matters. And I think that is something which some way or the other I've always had. Like even in tennis or even in like let's say long distance running, I felt the most confident when I knew that I was tired, because I always felt that okay, if I'm tired, the other guy is dead. So, so I love being tired because I knew that if I'm tired, I'm going to win this race.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing which has really helped me build this thing.
I would also say that this is a bit biased because I'm also a tennis player, but tennis teaches you grit like not many other sports can. You're alone with yourself all the time on that side of the court. So
Yeah.
you are the only problem solver. And when you're 5 love down, the only person that can get you back to winning that set 7-5 is yourself.
Yeah.
It reminds me of a quote that we both think about very fondly. The magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding. And I think it goes for everything you do in your life. The
Yeah.
process that you take, the stage where you reach that level where you feel like giving up but you don't, that is the point where you really start reaping more of the rewards and, like you said, feeling a lot more confident. So honestly, couldn't agree anymore on that. I do want to ask, when you finish the Ironman and even now coming out of it, it's been a while. How proud do you feel of yourself? How proud did you feel at the finish line? And now having reflected on it, like how much more confidence have you built and how much prouder of yourself are you?
Yeah. I mean, there was a time in the race where I realized that I'm going to finish. And that it was somewhere in the middle of running. Maybe had completed 34 or 35 kilometers. I knew that I've got this. I've got this in the bag. And that is the time where I really felt incredibly proud. I thought to myself, and I talk to myself a lot in first person. So I say Nirbhay when I talk to myself. So I'm like, I'm like, who do you, I mean, I was really like, I can't believe that you've had this confidence in yourself and you're crazy enough to actually do this. And I can't believe that we've actually done this. So at that time, like it's a constant conversation which is going on in my head most of the times. And at that time, what I felt was like, I felt that I could achieve literally anything I wish to achieve for the price of hard work. And that's an incredible feeling, if you really feel that nothing in the world is out of your reach for the price of hard work, for the price of actually putting in the hours. And that is something which I'm comfortable with doing. So that's an insane feeling to have, and that's a feeling which I felt some point in the middle of the race.
I am getting goosebumps right now. That's actually so inspiring.
You can achieve anything at the price of hard work. That's beautiful.
That is beautiful, and that should definitely go on a t-shirt, a book, and many other places. I think that this is the best place to It's the most positive note that we could have been on. I wanna end by asking just the one thing. If you could leave anybody listening to this with one piece of advice, someone in their early 20s, what is that piece of advice going to be?
So, one piece of advice I would really give everyone is that never leave your boundaries unexplored. You always want to know what you're capable of achieving. Because see, all of us are capable of achieving a lot, and separately in different things, and in each, different amounts we're capable of achieving something. But never leave that unexplored. You should never have a question of, if I did this, what would have happened, or if I took this step, what would have happened. Push your boundaries as much as you can, and once you commit to pushing your boundaries, don't stop till you've achieved your result.
That's beautiful.
That's what I say.
That is absolutely incredible. Honestly, Nirbhay, this has been some of the most fun we've had. So thank you so much for joining us. This was unbelievable, and I think that for both of us, we feel inspired right now. But I really hope that everyone listening to this can take a lot away from the kind of stuff that you've done in your life.
But
You guys, that means a lot, and
pleasure talking
thanks.
to you.
Thanks so much for having me. It's actually not always that you get to talk about yourself. So I've taken the most of this opportunity to talk about myself, and thank you for letting me, giving me a platform to discuss a few things which I've done. So it's been really fun.
It's always nice to have people actually come out and speak to all the cool stuff that they have done in their lives. And I think that's the beauty of these kind of conversations is there's so much that we have learned sitting across you, but I know for a fact there are people out there who will listen to this and go, "Holy shit, that is amazing." So I'm just excited. I'm just excited for that.
So, yeah.
Good advice and very inspiring.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think it was brilliant.
There's some dangerous one-liners in there. Some dangerous one-liners.
Yeah, I'm looking forward
I don't
to
know.
listening
You guys will
back
have to
to this.
find that out, bro. I don't know what I've said.
I'm